This is Melissa Morris, and I'm going to explain some stuttering and voice techniques. The first is slow rate of speech. Slow rate of speech. What we do in this is we slow our overall pacing. We elongate some of our vowels. We add a little bit more space between each word, and what this does is it gives our muscles and the actual motor activity part of our brain, it gives that a little bit of time to catch up to all of the signals that your brain is sending down to those muscles. The next is light contact. So in this one, it sounds, if I was doing light contact, it would sound like this. Light contact. What's happening in this is instead of having really aggressive scraping consonant sounds, I'm making them a whole lot lighter. So if I was saying something really aggressive, I'd say light contact. But with light contact, I'm just barely touching it. I like to think of just walking on water. I'm barely touching each of those sounds. What this does is it makes it a little bit easier for your mouth to gently say the sounds as opposed to getting blocked and stuck in those positions. The next is easy onset. And if I was using that strategy, it would sound like this. Easy onset. What this does is it prevents your vocal cords from getting tightened and locked together. So what happens sometimes is when you're stuttering, things get caught in your throat. And what we want to do is we want to have a little bit of air gently open up those vocal folds so that there's a little more flexibility so that the vocal folds can vibrate against each other so you can make the buzzing sound that we call our voices. So as we are doing easy onset, we're letting a little bit of air out of our throat, and then we have a very gentle voicing. So instead of easy onset, which is really hard, easy onset. The next one is cancellation, and this is a really good strategy if you're in conversation and you've already started to stutter. What you do is you have your little stuttering event. You're like, okay, I just said a stuttered word, and what you do is you go back and you say it again, but the second time a little bit slower, a little bit more clearly. So if I was saying cancellation. So I stuttered the first time, but then the second time I kind of slowed down, I relaxed things, and then I said it smooth the next time. This is helpful in conversation. If you already know you've stuttered, it just lets you go back and have a second chance at saying it correctly. The next one is similar, also something to do if you are already starting to stutter. This one requires you to be a little bit faster in your response time. So this one's called the pull-out method. So if I'm starting to stutter, if I'm saying, oh, I'm gonna pull out, what the pull-out method does is instead of tightening as I'm making the stuttered sound, what I do is I kind of catch myself and then I just relax. I relax my voice, I relax my throat so that the stuttering is a little bit easier, a little bit shorter, and a little more controlled. So if I was going to say, Chris will be here for dinner, I would say, Chris will be here for dinner. So I started to stutter and then I kind of relaxed and got through the end of my word. It's basically thinking, okay, it's not too late to change it. It's not too late to make the stutter a little better. The next is a preparatory set, and this requires a little bit more cognitive reserves. It requires planning ahead. So many stutterers have words that they know, oh man, I just know that I'm going to stutter when I get to that word. What this does is it makes you plan in advance so that before you get to the tricky word, you start slowing down and becoming a little more intentional about your speech before you get to the tricky word. So if I were to say, oh, hello, my name is Melissa, and I know that, okay, I often stutter on my name, it would sound like this. If I was not doing the preparatory set, it would sound like this. My name is Melissa. But if I was using the preparatory set, I would say, hello, my name is Melissa. I kind of paced myself so when I got to the tricky word, I was ready for it and I had more control. The next one is freezing. And this is a way to get a sense of feeling control over your stutter. So a lot of times stutterers just feel like, oh, it happens, it's out of my control, I have no control over this. But freezing basically takes a stutter and it holds it, and you're intentionally making your stutter until you feel like you're good and ready to let that stutter go. So if I was to say it on the word freezing, it would sound like this. Freezing. The purpose of this one is not so much that we want to do this in our regular speech, because that would be really awkward. Hey, oh my gosh, it's freezing outside. That would be really awkward. But the point of this is training in advance that we can have control over how long our stutters are. And if we can tighten our muscles like that and we can voluntarily release it, we're starting to gain that control. So we know, oh, this is how it feels when I relax my muscles. I kind of think of making a fist with my throat and all my neck muscles, and then relaxing that. The next strategy is voluntary stuttering. And like the freezing exercise, this is an exercise to try to gain more control over our stutter. So a lot of times when we stutter, we try to avoid talking and we try to avoid any situation where we might stutter. But we want to kind of reverse that. We're going towards the stutter so we can gain control over it. So if I was going to say the phrase voluntary stuttering, and I was intentionally doing my silly stutter, it would sound like this. Voluntary stuttering. So what we're doing is we're intentionally making our stutter worse, and it trains our brain, hey, I can control this. And there's a lot of times where you speak totally fluently, so we know that we know how to stutter and we know how to not stutter, and we'll gain a little bit more control over those. Moving on to voice techniques, we have the confidential voice, and that one sounds like this. Confidential voice. So this one is almost like a whisper, but it's still voiced, but it's very gentle and it's very soft. So this helps us to have not such a harsh or yelly voice. What happens is when we yell, we're like, hey! What's happening is our vocal folds are kind of slapped together. And if you've ever been clapping for a long amount of time, you'll notice that your hands start to hurt. If your vocal folds are slapping against each other hard enough, it can bleed, it can have cysts. So what we want to do with our confidential voice is we're preventing our vocal folds from really slapping together, and it's just easier. It gives our vocal folds a little chance to rest. The next exercise is something like a stretch. So what you're going to do is you're going to say the sound E, but you're going to do it with your tongue sticking out. It'll feel ridiculous, it'll look ridiculous, but it's actually really good. So it'll look like this. What this does is your tongue is actually attached to a bunch of muscles that are connected to your voice box or your larynx here. When you stick out your tongue, what it does is it actually pulls all of that out. So you're kind of stretching the muscles, and then when you let them go, they're a little bit more relaxed. The next one is a resonant voice. What this is we're trying to make a very buzzy, vibrational sound with the easiest effort possible. So I'm going to start with an I'm going to relax my jaw so my teeth are just barely touching each other. I'm going to barely touch my lips together, and I'm going to try and push the vibration forward. I'm going to imagine the vibration starting at the front of my lips and then just kind of vibrating from there to fill my whole oral cavity and my nasal cavity. Mom. So you can kind of hum with it, you can move it around. I like to think of being like a very intelligent professor, like, It gets a very, very buzzy, delicious, sort of tickly feeling in the front of your mouth. What this does is it makes it more efficient for your voice. Instead of making all of your effort and tightness being here, you're allowing the natural vibrations of your voice to amplify and make your voice sound easier. It also sounds prettier. If you ever have a little annoying voice like this, there's very little resonance. But if you have a very full and inviting voice, it means that there's more vibration. The next one is redirected phonation. And what we do with this one is we're starting with a very automatic response, like a cough. And what we're doing is from that cough, we are then going into our speech. So, awesome. So we're starting from that voice, and this is really good for people who have paralysis, or they're kind of in an your vocal folds are in an adductive position, because it kind of gets them open and moving, and then it makes it easier to actually do the rest of our speech. Lip and tongue trills. What this does is it really leaves everything nice and relaxed. Baby. It's just relaxes and allows the voice to be easier. The semi-occluded vocal tract exercise is where you are breathing out through a little straw, not like a big fat boba straw, but like a thin coffee stirrer. And we are going to be breathing out through the straw, and we are going to be voicing. So it'll sound like this. If I was saying the phrase semi-occluded vocal tract exercise, I would say it like this. Semi-occluded vocal tract exercise. What this does is it's really controlling how much air I'm letting out, and so it helps me be a little bit more controlled with the air through the vocal folds, so I can control it and be able to have a more controlled voice. The last, two more, the second to last is the yawn sigh. So, hello. Hello. So the yawn sigh allows a lot of open space in the back of your mouth, and the sigh is a very relaxing, everything is relaxing there. And then I'm going into my speech saying hello, and that helps us carry that relaxed sense from our yawn sigh into our regular speech. Hello. The last one is the linking. So what this does is it eliminates the pauses between our words. So it's not as much work for our vocal folds to start. It's kind of a continuous phonation. So instead of 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples, which is hard. Each time I kind of have this slapping sensation. If I'm linking them, it sounds like this. 1 apple, 2 apple, 3 apples. So I'm connecting each of those words together, letting them kind of run together so I have more smooth speech and I don't have to stop and start phonation